Well, let's head up on deck and see the sunrise. Good morning, Rovers. On what is most likely going to be my last full day at sea as we sail into the sunrise. Beautiful. Now, if you're not familiar with Wave Rover, or this is your first time watching the channel, Wave Rover is a 21-foot plywood junk rig sailboat that I built in my backyard. We've sailed down the east coast of the United States, and then we left Virginia Beach and sailed to the Azores, and from the Azores we're now sailing to Dublin, Ireland. So we have practically no wind right now. Which started yesterday evening and right through the night. So we barely made any miles whatsoever, but I know that's going to change, and it's going to change pretty dramatically. Over the next few hours, this will fill in, and we should have a pretty pleasant sail through most of the day with winds somewhere in the 15 to 20 knot margin. But then, around 2300 tonight, that's when the heavy winds are going to start. We're expecting 30 knots, and we're expecting that 30 knots right through the night and into, well, more or less this time tomorrow morning. And from that time on, we expect the wind to diminish back down to about 20 knots for what should be our entrance to Baltimore by mid-afternoon. Well, with the Mark III doing the work of steering Wave Rover, time to head below and make that daily meal. Well, it's time now for that meal prep, and you know, if you've been following along, you probably know exactly what the meal will be, because it's been pretty much the same meal every day that I've been at sea, both before the Azores and after the Azores, and that is 6 eggs. I'll just show you those. And I'll be mixing those up right away. A tin of salmon, a tin of mackerel, tin of sardines, and then over here this long one. Sometimes I substitute that in, that's kippers. Sometimes I just go with a second sardines. So I know what you're thinking, Alan, doesn't it get boring? Say, not really, because A, I like the taste, and B, there's so much else happening around here. You're not going to get bored about the meal. There's there's a lot else happening on board the boat. So anyway, I better crack on with making this. Well, it looks like I'm getting this done just in time. The wind seems to be picking up. Not that that's ever stopped us from making a meal, not really. But it does make it a whole lot easier. All right, let's pour our mackerel in. Mash that up a bit. Salmon. When you get salmon, make sure it's wild caught salmon. A lot of times, salmon that's billed as Atlantic salmon is actually farmed salmon, and farmed salmon has a lot of things that aren't good about it. You know, do your own research, but avoid it if you can. I suspect many of you know this stuff already. Get a little more in there. Sardines. A lot of people tell me they don't like sardines. Well, hard to understand. They're delicious. And they're nutritious. And last but not least, it's the kippers, and these are actually, wait a second, let me think about it, herring, not sardines. I also have kippers that are sardines, more British style. Well, there we go, fully mixed, ready to go into the pot. And you want to clean up as you go along. Just makes your life easier on a little boat with all that movement. Now I've got the stove turned on. It's lit. Get that spoon out of there. Just cook that for about 15 minutes and it's done. I always turn this down. I turn it up to start it, and then I turn it down to about 1.5 on a scale of 0 to 4. Well, the wind has certainly arrived. It's blowing about 19-20 knots, and Wave Rover's making 5+ knots, and we're under full sail. Let's head up on deck and just take a quick look at what it looks like. There's a Mark III holding a very, very straight course. We're on a broad reach. More and more bird life as we get closer, and we're 105 miles from Ireland right now. Like I said, under full sail. There's the orange rope trailing behind us. That's our safety rope if there's a man overboard. And the reason I'm able to have full sail up in almost 20 knots of wind is because the seas are so flat. The seas are building right now. In another hour or two, I'll have to reef the sail because the waves will be pushing us around. The first building I ever built was this 12 by 12 cabin. It was a 5-acre field. And in that 5 acres, there was about a third of that space was treed. And in the treed section, which was mostly poplar trees with a few spruce trees, there was a little opening. And in that opening, that's where I decided to build my 12 by 12 cabin. And at this point, I'm a carpentry apprentice. So, I don't know everything by a long shot, but I had a great instructor who taught me all about energy efficient homes. So I built this 12 by 12 as though it were this amazing energy efficient space. It just had a wooden floor, 4 walls, but the walls were about a foot thick, and it had a wood stove for heat. That was it, and one window looking out on that my little forest. So the cabin didn't have any hot and cold running water. It didn't have running water, period. I used to have to bring jugs of water into the cabin. But in order to wash, like take a shower or bath, I would hop in my car. Now my car is a 1972 Grand Fury. This wasn't the 70s, this was the mid-90s, but I was still stuck in that era. Massive whale of a car. I would drive to the lake, which was less than half a mile away, and just hop into the lake with a bar of soap. I mean, it was terrific. It was terrific in summer and perhaps a little bit of the fall. As the fall started approaching and I would put a little bit of firewood in, the World Series started up. And this year was the only year that the Toronto Blue Jays, a Canadian baseball team, actually made the finals
of the World Series. Canada as a nation was behind this one team because it represented all of us. And it was, the mighty Americans against the Canadians. I didn't want to miss it, despite being in this rugged sort of rural environment. So I had my radio, a little dry cell radio. I had a friend up from the city. We were both sitting there on the floor with a six-pack of beer, listening to the World Series as Toronto won the World Series. So after the Blue Jays won, I remember going outside, and this is the fall, as I recall. And the leaves were coming off the trees. And the branches come out on a poplar tree at nice intervals, and being able to pull myself up to a fairly high point and being able to look out over my domain, the first property I ever really owned, and being so happy. Being so happy not just with the Blue Jays winning the World Series, but also being so happy that I had my first home and I also had this magnificent property. I give off this huge yell of pure joy, a big whoop, to say thank you for winning the World Series and thank you for being in this position where I am the recipient of so much goodness.
As we are in the last 24 hours of this Atlantic crossing, I just want to thank all the benefactors of Wave Rover. You have been amazing. Thank you. Let's go up and see the last sunset of this Atlantic crossing. Oh, just behind that wave. Very nice. Very nice indeed. I don't know if you can see, but the deck is all wet here. That's because we've been taking waves right over Wave Rover, and that's why it's so great to have this Wave Rover hatch, nice and safe below. So this is really interesting for me because when I was 9 years old, my parents emigrated from Ireland, because I was born in Dublin, to Canada by ship. And now, 51 years later, I've built my own boat, and I've sailed it across the Atlantic, and tomorrow I'll be back in Ireland. It's quite a story. It's really a privilege to be able to do this. I kind of find the whole thing a bit humbling in a way. So anyway, that's my story. Right now, I think I'm going to go below and try to stay warm because it's going to be a long night with these gusts. These gusts are gusting 30 knots, and they're creating waves that smash over the boat and tend to pivot the boat in such a way that the sail becomes depowered, and then I have to come up on deck and get the boat, hand steer it back into the wind direction we need, power up the sail, and then she's good again. But the frequency of those waves doing that to us, well, it's about every half hour. Hopefully that'll diminish through the night, but who knows. Anyway, that's the plan. Time to go below. Well, right now the name of the game is to stay warm and dry, because up on deck it's cold, it's rainy, and it's windy. So those are three conditions that are really going to zap the energy out of you and then possibly put you into hypothermia. So to avoid that, I'm staying below, and I'm under the comforter. Yeah, this is my comforter that I bought in IKEA when I was in Halifax just before I set off on the voyage. What a great investment. And no, they're not sponsoring me to say that. It's just, it's really good. That gray cover comes off and you can launder it, which is great. And I'll be doing that when I get to Ireland. So I try to get sleep. You know, I try to get about 45 minutes sleep. And that's about as long as I can go. And then I get up and I check I check everything, but mostly you're going to adjust the Mark III to get yourself back on course because the wind is backing or veering, maybe adjust the sail, and then get back below and try to get some more sleep. By the time it gets to evening time and it's time to turn the nav lights on, that's when you want to stay vigilant. Now this whole routine that I'm doing, this is my near shore routine, because when you're near shore, you know, and we're only a little over 100 miles. We're like 103 miles to Ireland right now. And when you get to a rocky shore, that's when you need to be your most vigilant, your most alert. So that's the whole idea behind this routine that I'm doing. So right now, I think it's time to put my head down again. Well, let's go check out this sunrise. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Seas are still quite big, although they're not as big as last night. We had 4-meter waves. Now we're probably closer to 3 meters. There's still a lot of power left in this sea. There's one that's about 4 meters right there. Wow. Well, Rovers, this is likely the last sunrise of this passage, but wow, what a night, quite a wild ride, and it's not over yet. I'll show you the seas right away. It's probably the strongest winds that we've had on the entire Atlantic crossing for a 12-hour period. And like I said, they're diminishing, but not by much. A lot of these waves are 4 meters, which makes them about 12 feet. So it was a real test of the Wave Rover hatch, which didn't leak a drop, nor did the air-only vents. So all in all, quite a test, but we came through it just fine. Well, we are almost there, folks. After 15 full days and some change, we are pretty much at Ireland, and it's directly behind me. You probably can't see it on account of the camera, but coming up rapidly in about 4 miles is Fastnet Rock, the famous or infamous Fastnet Rock, depending on your perspective. You see, if you're not sure what I mean by infamous, check out the 1979 Fastnet race, and that'll explain it. Quite an iconic lighthouse. I'm looking forward to getting close to it and filming it. And then the island of Ireland is about, another 10 miles after that. So I have to say, this has been, hands down, the most challenging ocean passage I've ever been on, including last night. Last night was one of the most challenging nights, and when I say night, it actually was over 12 hours, probably closer to 18 hours of very high winds, big seas, because we left the deep blue of 2,000 meters and rapidly came up to where we are right now, 50 meters in depth, and it just makes for very short, big seas with this wind. And then to top it all off, we have a current against us right now of about 3/4 of a knot. So it's not over yet, but I can almost taste that Guinness. So there we have it, Fastnet Rock. Hopefully you can see it in the distance. It's actually very, very close. It's about 350 yards from me. And that's about as close as you want to get because there are some dangerous currents around it. Can you imagine, before a lighthouse was there, just coming up the shoreline of Ireland about 10 miles off the coast, and you come across this lone rock? How devastating. And if you can see it, there's a little nub to the right of the lighthouse, and that's where the original lighthouse was. It was cast iron, and the base of it is all that remains now, that's used as a storehouse for the main lighthouse. Quite a thing. How did they manage to build it? Get everything over. There's no natural harbor. It looks like it would be very difficult. But clearly not impossible. Look at the water, the waves just breaking on it. Well, here's the entrance to Baltimore Harbor. We're coming in under reduced sail because it's still very windy. We're making 4.5 knots right now. I've got the fenders rigged up for port side 2 where there's space along the pontoon, so we're going to grab it for a few hours. So I'm in Baltimore. This is the welcoming committee. And what do you guys have to say for yourselves?
Forge your own adventure.
Well done. So before I left on this trip, I weighed myself in Virginia Beach, and I believe it was 138.5 pounds. On. So we're 138.5. I'm now in Baltimore, Ireland. There's a scale here. I'm going to step on it and see what the difference is. And it is, well, 130.5 pounds. So that's 8 pounds in the difference. So somewhere between Virginia Beach and Baltimore, there's 8 pounds of Wave Rover missing.
Well, Rovers, it's over. We have crossed the Atlantic, and what an experience. You know, this just doesn't get old. Each one has been special. This is my 4th ocean crossing. I crossed the Pacific as a young man in a boat I built myself, and then 3 Atlantic crossings just in the last few years. And you know, in a sense, I'm home. You know, this is not that Baltimore is my home, but it's such a sailing, you know, mecca, Baltimore, Ireland. It's all geared up. So much maritime paraphernalia and all the little pubs here. And but I was born in Ireland, in Dublin, Ireland, and left Ireland when I was 9 on a ship, no less, and ended up in Canada. And then 51 years later, to have built a boat in my backyard, a 21-foot boat, and to sail that boat across the Atlantic to Ireland, coming home. It's a story I just love telling. It's the symmetry of it. So last night when I got in, you know, I had to have the shower, and then went to a pub and had a steak dinner, and Ray, that's Seahawk, he was there, and he said to me, "Alan, just take a second. Just, you know, reflect on this. You just crossed an ocean in a 21-foot boat." And it's true. It hadn't really dawned on me, you know. There was all that adrenaline rush of getting in and things to do. And I took a moment and reflected on it. And such a privilege to have been able to do this. And I just want to say thank you to all of you who've been watching the channel, and to those of you who've supported this whole voyage. You know, it's been marvelous, and the whole thing is sort of made possible and inspires me to carry on. So thank you, and I hope all of you are forging your own adventure.